Welcome to the Scotty P Podcast, man. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Michael Ocampo, the Renzo Gracie The Grove owner and head coach. Thank you for coming on, bro.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be out here. It's an honor, really. So,
yeah, man. I got to have the honor of training with you, man. I got to take your class, man. I really liked the, so essentially you showed a sequence of breaking down the turtle, trapping the leg, and something that like works for you.
Yes. What I showed was taking the turtle, and a lot of times little guys like me, we get anxious, we jump on the back, maybe throw on the seatbelt, throw on our inside hook, and big people that either can catch the elbow and they do that super big roll and put me on bottom side control. That used to happen a lot. And so I was like, man, I really need a way to keep attacking the back, but just not get rolled onto the bottom position. Same thing would happen when I would throw in my hooks. They'd be like, okay, well, throw the hooks in first, and then secure the seatbelt. I would throw my hooks in, and then they would roll to like a half guard and get an underhook before I knew it. And so I've been really kind of just using like a tight waist lock to keep somebody in the turtle. And I've been using outside hooks or leg staples to kind of expose the back and making my partner kind of fall apart and then take the back from there. So
yeah. I definitely use like what they call a Casoda hook, which is anytime you use the outside of your foot to drag the leg. So same thing, but then you just replaced it with your other leg and used your laces to essentially
so I leg lace a lot. My students make fun of me because sometimes it's like a detail that my feet do automatically, and then they're like, wait, he's doing something with his feet too, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so I guess I should teach this stuff. And so this is a lesson where I actually specifically teach it. I'm like, okay, my legs are stapling, and but yeah, that's actually a lot of my style. It's very evident in that one, but when I'm in top side control, I'm stapling arms, stapling all the time. So trying to remove options. I can't really physically impose a game, but what I can do is impose my options, and then the person just has to option play me.
Right. No, hell yeah. From the waist position, I like to like lean really heavy on their back and like kind of almost drag them to the mat and kind of like place a butterfly hook on them to like really like put all my weight on them. And I was like, man, the way that you're doing like double, I was like, I could go double in front of their laces and that would trip them. So it was like sparking something in my mind. I was like the same way, because you essentially were showing that from the tight waist, if you can expose the gap underneath their butt from messing up their base, you go 2 hooks on that same side leg.
And it lets you just choose, really. You can kind of choose. You just step one out, or you can like replace them and step them out. So yeah, I use it a lot.
Yeah, so I was like, man, I'll probably use that next time someone's standing, and as I drag them, go double. See if it like really trips them.
A lot of the times I'm even just hanging on, and then I double leg lace, but they still can't roll out or sit out. I'm still on the back. So they just carrying my weight. And if they're carrying your weight, it'd be miserable. You know what I mean? For me, they're just like,
yeah. Oh, dude, I'm the small guy for the heavyweights. Nice. I'm not a big heavyweight, so there's guys that are literally just walking around with me, and I'm just like, man, this is not fun.
Yeah. Whenever I get to this back position, I try to take advantage of. I might have been there with you before, and if I was, I probably tried and prayed to stay there the whole time, because it's essentially the place that I can be where they don't pull me back under guard with full, like literally brute strength. Get one little underhook and they're just like rip, back to the guard. So
right.
Keeps me on the back.
Yeah. And then, before that too, we were going over, so the Russian, what is it, 2-on-1, Russian 2-on-1, and then you use it to go to around the ankle, set up the knee pick, and then off the knee pick, go for the duck under or fireman's carry, right?
Yes, like fireman's carry, you have high crotch singles there, lots of stuff there.
Yeah, man, I really like, because I've been working more on like setting up like a duck under.
Yes. I had one duck under like my whole life. It was the normal, the clinch, and I'm like, all right, shuck and duck.
But the better guys, you got to set it up
You
more.
do. And so this is essentially it is an elaborate setup, but I try to put them into like a sequential chain of events where they're high percentage if you know them. And then when they're low percentage, it's like giving you the next thing.
Yes, yeah.
And so, it's a very like, the chain of events, you always see them all the time. You always try the trip, you always try the knee pick. And so just a little bit of left, right, and now I get an opening underneath.
Yeah, see, I've been playing it by myself. I don't have like a wrestling coach specifically. But I've been playing a lot with like, I do a lot of Russian 2-on-1s. And I usually, the best success that I have if they're like sprawling away is like throwing it up and then getting underneath.
Yeah.
But I was having a problem because I do know to attack this leg, right? So I'll usually look to like get them to move it. But then what I would do is then try the duck under after that. But I realized that leg is too far away because it's
the hip is so far.
Yeah, so it's like,
me
man.
too. I used to think that was the answer.
Yeah, so then now that you showed me, it's like, okay, first, so go for that, get them to back up, then switch here, then set it up. And it was like, it was clicking some things in my brain.
Because what'll happen is they're not far away and all their weight's on it, so they can't move it either. So then now you're on it, you know?
Right. See, I got some white belts. They're about to figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
So man, just for the audience, you're a successful coach. I mean, dude, you got a beautiful gym here. Man, I like the way the sun comes in over here. It's just like, that aesthetic gym. So maybe just tell people kind of like your background and how you came up.
Yeah. I've been doing martial arts my whole life. I started with Taekwondo when I was like 5. And I've been doing martial arts ever since. Well, hold on, not ever since. There's probably like a 10-year period, and I'll get there. But there's about a 10-year period in my 20s where I wasn't doing martial arts, but I was like breakdancing, doing capoeira, and I was still doing body stuff.
Man, you still know? Do you know Estilo?
No, I've seen him online because we have friends of friends. Man, that guy's a G. He's real good. He's real good.
I literally just had a podcast with him, but yeah, breakdancer.
So the body stuff. Yeah. I started when I was 5. A lot of people, they saw a movie and they were like, oh, I want to be a martial artist. And if you're older than me, most people are like, I saw Bruce Lee, blah, 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 this. And then people that are younger than me are like, I saw Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport, blah, blah, blah. For me, dude, Ernie Reyes Jr. He was the guy because I was like maybe 4 when I started like, seeing martial arts on the screen, like, oh, that's so cool. And what was that movie? The Last Dragon came out. The Last Dragon, and Ernie Reyes Jr. was in there, and he had the same haircut as me. He was the same size. He looked like me. I like looked at the TV and I was like, dude, that looks like me. And him and his dad were the choreographers for some of the martial arts fight scenes, and so they had a scene together and they did that. And then I was like, Dad, I want to do that. And he goes, I used to teach when I was in the Philippines. I was like, what? And he taught Hapkido, which is like, it's Taekwondo with takedown. So it's essentially like, it's like Taekwondo, but a little bit more traditional. They have more takedowns and grappling. Anyway, so he goes, you want to do that or judo? And at that time, I didn't know what judo was. So I asked him, I go, what's judo? And he goes, it's in the Olympics. And I was like, whenever I would hear the Olympics, I would just see all the track and field stuff and gymnastics. So I was like, I was like, no thanks. And I go, what's Taekwondo? And he goes, Taekwondo is what they were doing in that movie. And I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so, dude, I started Taekwondo. And
dude,
so,
that's awesome.
I fell in love with it just like most kids do. You either know right away that it's something for you, or you're just like, oh, this is fun, but I want to do something else. I wasn't like that. I loved it. I wasn't terribly good at it. I just loved it a lot. And so, the love for it kept me training, and I would see the progress that I would make, and I would, I saw what hard work got for me. And I guess that's kind of what martial arts does, or at least I hope it does that for the kids here. Grappling is great for that. It gives them something to like not only achieve, but it shows that you're like, you come in time after time and you don't see progress day after day, but like month after month, you're like, hold on, I'm doing a little bit better. Things are easier, things are making sense. And when things started clicking like that, I guess it caught hold of me at such a formative age. It could have been anything, but I was like figuring stuff out. Mm-hmm. And when you're a kid, you figure stuff out, you feel like a genius. You're just like, you know what I mean? You're like, I figured it out.
Yeah, and that was everything.
And that was what took hold of me. So,
oh yeah.
So it started with that, okay, Taekwondo, and then Taekwondo and various martial arts throughout high school. And then once I was like in high school and going into I went into the military after that. I just didn't have time for martial arts. I was focusing on school. I was focusing on my work and stuff. But
like a responsible adult, essentially.
Yeah, trying to be. Not really, I guess, because it took me away from martial arts. I started dancing. You can only do that at the club. So I was that sounds fun. But I wouldn't say I stayed in shape, because I got in terrible shape. I was terribly out of shape, but I could still move my body. Like I could still understand. I still had coordination. I still had timing. I lost all my instincts for fighting and stuff.
So when you say out of shape, were you getting like chunky?
Okay, so maybe they'll see a picture of us. We can stand up, but like how tall? Like I'm 5'4".
Yeah.
Okay, on a good day. At my heaviest that I weighed myself, I was 5'4", 188 pounds.
Damn.
Okay, so that's 12 pounds away from 200.
Yeah,
I'm 5'4", bro. So I don't remember how round I was. I'm sure my friends do, but like I don't remember how round I was because I was just living in my own body. I didn't know any better. And it just crept up on me because I was in high school. I was 155 the whole time. I'm smaller than that now, but yeah, I really just, wasted youth. 20 years, dude.
That,
I mean, 20 years old, in my 20s, wasted youth. So, but I had fun. And, by the time I started, like, I got married, got my son, and I started really adulting at that point. I was like, okay, I need to get in shape. That's when I was in the Air Force, when I was training heavy in grappling. And then I did jiu-jitsu for a little bit. I started jiu-jitsu in 2006 in San Antonio at a Helson Academy. It was run by a purple belt named Josh Lauber. And he still teaches and runs a school out there now. He's a black belt, of course. But like I was there only for maybe 3 or 4 months, and I got stationed in Korea. And so when I was in Korea, it was about a year of essentially glorified garage training, because there was a handful of amateur MMA guys, a handful of judo guys, like 2 guys from the Air Force boxing team, a traditional martial artist, and then a traditional judo guy. And we were all just like, all right, let's mix it up in the racquetball court.
Hell yeah.
And so it kind of sorted itself out, man. That's kind of how it is in the military. A lot of military folks tell you, I don't know if you were in the military. Were you in the military?
Yeah, I was a Marine.
Okay, yeah. So sometimes you find a group and you're like, all right, let's run with it. And that group sticks with it and they do what they do. There was some weightlifters here. There were some runners over here. And there were some guys in the racquetball court that didn't play a stitch of racquetball. We were just in there fighting it out.
Yeah.
And so I did that for about a year. So like my instincts for scrambling and wrestling, even though it wasn't any good, you kind of understood what was going on, when you roll. And so I tried to, apply what I could as far as gi jiu-jitsu at the time, but I was literally a 3-month white belt and ditched the gi and went into no gi. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but I kept up and learned from the people that were there that had some previous experience. A lot of those guys are black belts now, still training, so that's cool. And then when I got stationed to South Carolina is when I really decided, okay, I need to like do something about my shape and do this and that. I entered a few judo tournaments, and at 188, 5'4", the dudes were like, 6'2", cutting down. And so I was like, okay, I can't do this. I remember I won I think it was the Charleston I got second place, Charleston BJJ Open, and the first place winner was like 2 weight divisions above me, but because there's nobody else. And so, that's kind of my whole life. 2010 maybe. So yeah, 2010. So I was, doing judo and jiu-jitsu at the same time out there. I started judo because it was, there was a guy named Dr. Ronald Charles, and he's been teaching, anybody that's done judo in the Charleston area knows who he is. He has the 2nd largest judo club in the USJA, at least at the time. And, he kind of just took me under his wing. He has an affinity for the military. So a lot of the guys that were on base, if you had a DOD card, you could just join his program. And so I did a lot of my judo with him, and did a few competitions, and that's when I started to lose the weight. And when I went into how I told you I did this competition a couple of weights up and I got second place, I was like, I did well on the ground. And so I was like, all right, let me go back to jiu-jitsu. And then since then I was like mostly jiu-jitsu, and then judo, I filled in the gaps along the way. So that's a snapshot of how I got here.
Yeah. And then we met at Renzo Gracie Houston,
yes.
So the one in Sugarland.
Yes.
And you were just asking me about, like somehow, I think you maybe talked to Tori or something, and she was telling you we were from South Carolina, and then you were like, oh, dude, I'm from there. And we just started chatting it up, and then you roll with me. And, I always respect anybody that rolls with me. Usually everyone's kind of like looking around. They don't see me. I'm invisible. But you're like, dude, you're from South Carolina. Those are my homies, dude. Let's mix it up. Yeah. I think we knew like trained at some of the same gyms.
Probably, because I mean, it's a small area out there.
Yeah,
so it's like, I mean, when I started jiu-jitsu out there was like maybe 3 gyms, I think, maybe 3 gyms. And there's a lot now, but everybody still knows everybody, and they cross-train with people in Georgia and North Carolina all the time. And so Conflict MMA is a promotion out there that I used to kind of like volunteer for and work with. And so get, they since they're a fight promotion, you meet a lot of people and through a lot of gyms. And so whenever down here, especially when I'm like, you're from South Carolina? I'm like, oh man, we must know the same people. There's no way that we don't.
Right.
So
yeah, no doubt, dude. And man, so we were chatting it up earlier, and you're telling me you had like a pretty wild story of just like, how you've, used jiu-jitsu, and just like, you said you had a pretty crazy story.
Yeah. So, everybody has a pretty cliche story about like, yeah, jiu-jitsu, you know, it changed my life and all this and that. But man, it really is true. There are some people where, you know, you train jiu-jitsu and you come in and maybe you're here for exercise, maybe you're here for self-defense, maybe you're training for a fight for your life that 99% of the time is not going to happen. But most people fall in love with this stuff because they're like problem solvers, or they have, something in them that like wants to figure things out, and they see somebody else doing it and they're like, I can figure this out. Why was this so difficult for me? Let me come back. For me, jiu-jitsu provided all of that, but it also provided like a social circle, of course. And during, I moved from South Carolina to Houston when I was a purple belt. Okay, so I was a purple belt, and I had retired from the Air Force. And about 2 years after I retired, I retired from the Air Force in 2014. And for the 2 years that I was here in Houston, I was working, you know, oil and gas, like everybody that comes to Houston does. I'm from Houston, but I came back knowing that I could get a job in oil and gas. I did that. And in 2016, my first wife passed away. And my son was 6 years old at the time. And so, you know, what's wild about this is that while my wife passing away is probably the hardest tragedy that I could have ever imagined going through, still to this day, right? It's just the most tragic thing ever. But it's like she wasn't taken in an accident. You know, she had a heart condition that we knew about, and so every day that we were together, we knew we needed to make the most of it. We knew that there was a timeline on what this would be. When we first got married, we weren't even sure that we were going to have kids. So my son was a blessing at that time, and so after that, it's kind of weird because when I had the option to retire early, I was like, where are we going to retire? And at that time, she was like, can we move back to Houston? And I didn't want to. I thought I was going to, you know, stake my claim in South Carolina and blow up jiu-jitsu over there. But I was like, yeah, let's do that. And in that, you know, fortunately we did, because all of our friends and family were here. And so she had a heart condition that developed when she was younger through chemotherapy because she had cancer. The cancer was gone, but the heart condition remained and it never got better. And so she was on the heart transplant list. And after she passed away, I remember thinking, okay, well, before she had passed away, there was a moment of time where it's like my whole life was just topsy-turvy and all this and that, right? And like, aside from like helping out at the house or being at the hospital or helping out with my family, I literally don't remember anything else but jiu-jitsu. And I think to rationalize that to myself now, and I'm sure a lot of people, they come to jiu-jitsu to just train, they like have a crap day, they have a shit day, and they just come out here. I remember explaining to somebody at that time saying, I just need to feel on the outside what I'm feeling on the inside. Like my worlds aren't, you know, you got to put on a good face for people, and on the inside, you're just like, it's a mess. And so it was like, if my jiu-jitsu is a mess and I'm getting crushed, at least it's like my world is sorted. Like my inside feels like a mess. You know, and I'm going on about my day doing things proper, and it just, I don't know how to explain it, bro, but you know what I mean? Like I just didn't feel something. It just, my outsides and my insides didn't feel the same. And when I was getting my ass smashed in jiu-jitsu, I was like, yeah, this feels like the pain on the inside. And like just for that hour or so, my world was right because everything reconciled. And then the second half of that is like, of course, when you're doing jiu-jitsu, everything's gone out of your brain. You know, you can only think about in the moment and stuff like that. And so like with those two is like, you know, jiu-jitsu really got me through the hardest times of my life because I don't know where my brain would wander. I don't know what my body would do with all of that. Not being able to reconcile physical and mental emotions. Like I had no answers. Yeah. Jiu-jitsu, I didn't seek answers in jiu-jitsu. It just had them for me kind of thing. During this time, it was just, yeah, I didn't know that I was going to do it for the rest of my life then. But I did realize how important it was during that time. And so then, you know, after time had passed, my wife had passed away, and I'm in a position where I'm with a new blended family, and I'm happy, and I'm like, man, the previous marriage that I had, and all the work that I put into not, you know, spending time with them and just building, I don't know, a fortune to build a big house for just 3 people at the time. That also all of a sudden just didn't reconcile. Like I couldn't afford that house anymore. There was 2 of us now. It was giant. And I was just like, okay, this doesn't reconcile inside. My insides and like things aren't like, I can't do this. So that house got foreclosed. I moved back with my parents. I was with my son. You know, I didn't think that I was ever going to get back on my feet. My Charlene, who was my wife at the time, my son's mother, told me, she goes, you know what, she was the one that actually had the clarity in the situation. She was like, you're still young and you don't know what your future is going to be like. And I remember thinking, if this is it, I'm like, I'm going to have emotionally nothing when I'm done from this. But she's like, you're saying that now, but I don't think that that's the case. And she said something that like was not, it kind of put it into perspective. And she was like, whatever the case may be for you, can you assure me that he's going to have Nico's going to have a good life? And I was like, oh, man, it ain't about me now either. I don't have to just manage my own heartache. I was like, oh man, I got to like build something around him too. And so, yeah. So now that I met Claudia, we got our kids together and we put together this blended family, and everything inside the home started reconciling. Things were good again. Like my life wasn't topsy-turvy. Things started to balance. I was like, how do we maintain this? I don't feel like I should maintain this if I go back out into the rat race. And so, yeah, I really thank the military for giving me the opportunity to retire, have medical benefits so I could do something like this. But I probably never would have taken this leap if there was no catalyst, there was no perspective gaining thing in my life. I remember when COVID happened, I thought, I hope a lot of people gain some perspective from this. Like, there's got to be another way that I can, if they enjoyed their time with their family, they were like, there's got to be a way I can make this happen every day. Like, COVID should have been the best thing to happen to everybody when they were locked with their families, in my opinion. I don't know what everybody's life was like, but I remember thinking, I was like, oh God, whatever I can do to just be with my family all the time. And I hope everybody else, sees this. We had opened the gym already through COVID. And so, our founding members just, stayed with us through that crazy time in America. And, now we're here. It's wild. I keep telling everybody and I sign off with it's been a wild and blessed life. I felt like I lived a million lives, you know what I mean? And here we are. And now all I do every day is just pour myself into jiu-jitsu. And it's like, I feel like a kid again, where it was literally the only thing I felt I was good at. At 6 years old, I was 5, 6 years old, I was like, I can do this stuff. And I'm here hey, I can do this stuff. And people care. So I'm like, all right, cool. When I was 6, people didn't care. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely felt that energy taking your class. It's like you come at it with enthusiasm.
Oh, man, I love it.
You're making jokes, and it's just you come at it with a light heart, and that you really do enjoy being here. Some coaches, it's a job for them. Okay, this is what we're doing, guys. We got to do this. We got to do this. It's very serious. But with you, I could just tell that you guys are it's very casual, very happy. Everyone's here to have a good time.
I want to make sure people enjoy it. I mean, it starts with the kids program first, because I want to make sure that adults, by the time they decide they're going to enjoy this, doesn't take much to do that for them. But for kids, man, it's hard. And I don't know anything that the parents tell their kids on their way home, whether their kid had a good day or a bad day on the mat, where they even can tell what's good or bad because they don't know jiu-jitsu. But I know that my job is to make sure that the kids enjoy this stuff. And then that's number one. And then number two is, if my training is good enough, no matter how much they enjoy it, if they're doing proper jiu-jitsu training, they're going to get good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The guy that shows up, they're like, I'm never going to get this. You just tell that guy, keep on showing up. Well, the kids show up when they enjoy it. You don't have to, you can't convince a kid to keep coming. They'll just hate it. Come on, you got to go to class to get better. No kid's going to be like, okay. Yeah. I mean, there are some. Yeah. But there are kids that if they enjoy it, you don't have to tell them to come to class. Yeah, they'll be like, hey, it's time. Are we going to jiu-jitsu today?
Suckers start showing up early.
Yeah, I got plenty of kids showing up early. I'm like, hold on. Yeah. And so, and that's what I try to do. The other thing too that kind of helps with that is I happen to be a little bit smaller. And so I tell people all the time, I was like, listen, if you expect that you're going to come out here and then watch your professor mop the floor with anybody that walks through the door, this is not for you. What I do is I come here to prove the art. And if they have that concept and then they watch the things that I'm capable of, now it's oh, okay, I don't have to beat my chest here. I don't have to make everybody tap here. I don't have to whatever. And now, of course, I'm going to try to smoke everybody that goes through the door, right? Try to make sure that I prove the jiu-jitsu that I really can do. But when they see me doing small victories, even on odds that that you would see out on the street, they'd be like, wow, that's tall odds that this guy has to go against. 5'4", 145 pounds or whatever. But yeah, that's really all I hope to do for the adults. They enjoy it enough and they can make their own decisions. So for them, it's like, well, what about this school over the next school? It's like, listen, I can't promise you. Like, even if I was a school that bred a bunch of world champions, I can't promise everybody that walks the door, you're going to be a world champion. A lot of that's on you. What I can offer you is my viewpoint of jiu-jitsu, and I can show you that I can prove the art every night.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I can't ask for any more. I can't tell you I'm gonna tap everybody every night. I'm gonna tell you I can't tell you that I'm gonna be undefeated every night. But I can tell you I can prove the art every night. So and they're good with that. You know, we're happy with that. And then we get to go Houston's a great city for jiu-jitsu because we all get to cross train. Everybody's cool with each other. And so yeah, that the city itself helps this vibe. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you're a part of the Renzo Gracie community, you got like 8 gyms you can go train.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Man. And then so like, yeah. So just in jiu-jitsu in general, you know, everyone will say it's like, you know, the best kind of game is like a small man game, right? Because, you know, if you're using strength, you're getting away from what jiu-jitsu is. And if you're using your size, I mean, you want to if you can, but a lot of times there's always going to be somebody stronger and someone heavier.
Yes.
So you want to try your best to play what they call small man jiu-jitsu. So like, and I've always learned that because again, when I was in the Marine Corps, it's like, if you're 6 foot, 200 pounds, you're like, oh, guess what? You get to go roll. You're the training partner for the Mongoloid over there. And there's always a Mongoloid, some fucking 6'5", 300 pounds. And he's like, you know, stomping on my feet. Dude, my toes are all jacked up from having heavyweights, you know, clumsy heavyweights stomping on my toes all the time and throwing me and falling on me. And so it's like, you know, I had a nickname in some of the martial arts courses, the Giant Slayer, because I had to go against the biggest guys and I'd be like, I don't care, dude, I'll take him. I don't care. I'll go against him. It's like, someone's got to go against him, and if that's me, then so be it.
So be it. Yeah, I'm almost, not that I appreciate that. Like, I try to, because you hear it when you're a small dude, like if I try to avoid what Napoleon complex is or whatever that thing is. Yeah. But like, I do find that it's like, I would almost rather fight somebody a little bit bigger. So that way I could be like, all right, you know, I stepped up to the plate. You know what I mean? Like, I stepped up to the plate. I gave it a shot. But, you know, over time, it starts to work out. Your jiu-jitsu gets good and everything. But I tell people, especially the ones that come here because they come in learning that, they think, or somebody would recommend, hey, go to Professor Mike's place. He's the smallest dude. He's not even the biggest kid in the kids' class. You're going to learn some great small gen jiu-jitsu. So they show up and I tell people that, because you hear all the time, like, technique beats size and strength. I'm like, hold on. Let me tell you from a guy that's small. Technique, where's the camera? I don't know which of these is it. Technique doesn't beat size or strength. But what it does is, if your technique is good enough and you can always improve your technique, you can do something about mitigating the physical advantage gap.
Yes.
That's about it. You can mitigate the physical advantage gap with technique. Yeah. That's why if a dude that's training, that's like, you're bigger than me, now all of a sudden your technique meets my technique, that physical gap is present again. But for most people, you know, if they're not training or they're training less or not training at all, technique, yes. Now the physical gap closes, and technique and experience. People always forget about the experience part, because I could teach you all the technique, and if you're still like me at blue belt, I do generally the same game. Like around purple belt, you're pretty much set in your path. Now I'm just much sharper. But at purple belt, I was less effective because while I had the same technique, probably did the same techniques to a degree, the experience wasn't there. So experience is also huge. So a lot of people forget about that part. So it's like, not just small man jiu-jitsu. You need technique, and then you need to practice that small man jiu-jitsu over and over again.
Dude, it's so funny you say that. Not too long ago, I'm like going through either one of my social media accounts, and a memory pops up of like a video I didn't even know existed anymore, dude. And it was like a cage fight down in somewhere in South Carolina. I remember I drove a couple hours to get there, and we're grappling in some old wrestling gym, right? Or some old abandoned basketball court. They got a cage in there, and I'm pretty sure the dude I was going to get maybe a blue or purple belt, and I was a white belt. But, you know, Marine Corps style, like very good at grappling, just no official belt. Yeah. And I'm watching the video, dude, and I'm like, as a seasoned brown belt looking at white belt me, I'm like, dude, I'm doing all the same moves.
Yeah.
I was just literally like, you're going to sit here and tell me that like 7 years ago, I'm pretty much doing the same stuff.
Pretty much doing the same stuff.
Chasing turtle, trying to expose the back, like all the same stuff. But just like you said, the only difference now is I'm sharper. Yep. I'm sharper. I pull the trigger faster. I know where I want to go, and I have ways to mitigate shit. But in general, my pathways are pretty simple.
Yeah, you kind of you find what you like. That's why I tell people to try to find their game early, and they think, well, I don't know if I like this or that. I was like, listen, if it's worked for you ever, you're gonna latch onto that thing.
Yeah.
Like right now, like you should take that as a win. Like, okay, whatever that thing that worked once is, run with it forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so
one of my buddies was telling me yesterday. He's a business coach, and he's just like helping me with some things. And he was like, "Yeah, dude, most people never get a win." He's like, "You take a win, you just replicate it." He's like, "This win." He's like, "We're just gonna figure out how we make that happen again,
over and over."
Yeah, over and over.
Over
We're
and
not reinventing the wheel. Nothing. We did that. How do we do that again?
And like I remember there was distinctly a time, probably during those same formative years, blue belt, late white belt, early blue belt, where I like a flip switch, and I was like if I might not do the technique of the day, that might not be my game, but like if that doesn't work, my game shows up here, you know, like the very next spot. Like, okay, I'm going to go for this because my game is the very next spot. Whereas most people will take the lesson and they're like, I don't do that. And then they just like, they'll rep it a few times and then they're like, won't find out how it fits into their road. But man, that might be a pathway in or out of the one thing that you know.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
I definitely try to adapt that as much. Kind of when we talked about here, like positioning some of the positions that are same standing, same on the ground.
Right.
I'm like, okay, let's replicate what we just did. Like, I'm going to use the body lock. I'm going to use the tight waist. If it worked when they're standing, I'm going to use it on the turtle.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, 100%.
Replicate it.
So you had some wrestlers in here. Are they your students?
Yeah. So Coach Tim Stoll, who trains out here, he's the wrestling coach over at Tompkins High School. And yeah, he brings his guys out here to train. I go out there. I'll be going out there in July to do some camps with them. And so what's cool is, and I'm glad for Coach Tim to bringing me out there is because I have like a grappling background. He's really open to cross training with his wrestling guys. The stuff that I did today, where he's like, man, these leg rides and these wrist rides are things that they can use in wrestling. And I'm like, I don't know anything about scoring in wrestling, but if I can expose the back to the mat, or expose the back to me, if that helps you, yeah. And he's like, dude, let's rock. And so, yeah, they come in every once in a while. And like I said, I'll be going out there maybe in the summer to do a camp with them, and we'll see how it goes. But
heck yeah,
wrestling is huge here in Houston. Especially on this side of town, Katy and stuff. But we're kind of, what's cool about Coach Tim and those guys, they come down here. We're in Fort Bend ISD, and I grew up in Fort Bend ISD, and we did not have wrestling. I didn't even know that. I mean, I knew what wrestling was, but I didn't know how related it was to like traditional martial arts, or else I totally would have geeked out on it. I didn't know. You know, I just thought that was the end of it. I was traditional sports. And I was like, well, I'm a kung fu nerd. I don't know what I am, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, since on this side of town, wrestling's huge. Fortunate to get those guys to come in here and train.
Yeah.
We do a lot of wrestling anyways. We do stand up, because of judo. I'm not a guard first kind of school. I'm not a pull guard first kind of school. So.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was like, well, we're doing stand up today.
I did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, I never, I mean, unless it's an offensive pull to a sweep or a pull to a, shin to shin entry or something like that.
You're always doing stand up.
We're always doing stand up. I'm either teaching them judo, I'm teaching them wrestling, and kind of like how today works, I'll teach, for example, here's 2 or 3 techniques that go together when they work. And then when all things fall apart, they square up. This is how you would pull guard to something else. So it'll be like when this stuff doesn't work, here's how you would end up in a guard. But it's not like guard first.
Right, and it probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, it's the culture that I ended up growing, so nobody really knows that the other places are really guard pullers. So where it has found, where I found it's hurt us, is in the divisions where they're willing to play pull guard first. Like my guys are like, well, I guess I'm passing now, and it's like not on their term. They didn't get taken down, and they didn't get the takedown, and so now they have to work for a good top position. But now that they understand that most people are willing to pull guard faster than they are, they're now reacting to the guard pulls. But yeah, I guess I should take pride in it. But yeah, we don't really, we do pull guard and we play from guard and we have guard players, but I always give the options for takedown first. I always give the options for takedown first.
Sweet. Yeah, and then so the reason I brought up the wrestler is because that kid, I think his name was Israel.
Yes.
Yeah,
the taller one?
Yeah, he asked me for some extra rounds after. Yep. With a smile on his face.
Dude, he wants more. He wouldn't. If you would have gone more, he would have gone all night.
Yeah,
he'd have gone all night.
Yeah. You got one, 2 with me, and then another one with my buddy Leon, who's a wrestler and blue belt Savage, and that to me was like a prime example of like grappling and what it can do for a kid, because most people avoid me at all costs. They don't want to roll me. And, you know, and I get it because I wouldn't want to roll me either. It's like, here's a 200 plus mongoloid black belt, like with a camera guy.
Tall order.
No thanks. I ain't trying to get highlighted on YouTube. You know, start the matter. Here's Scotty's got a really popular YouTube. Hey, you want to roll? They're like blind all of a sudden. Like, no thanks. But the fact that, so like I look up and he's like smiling at me and just like staring at me. I'm like, you want to roll? And he's like, yeah, please, professor. And I'm like,
they
dude.
love it.
Yeah. So just that like.
Yeah, because once they latch onto something and love it, like it's over. It takes over their mind completely. They can't think of anything else. And so being surrounded by it is huge for influence. Like when Donkey Boy put up this mural, I remember asking him, I said, hey, I go, did you do this your whole life? Because I was in entrepreneur mode too. You're in entrepreneur mode. He was in entrepreneur mode. I go, did you always know you're going to paint your whole life? And he goes, yeah. And I go, how'd you know that? And he goes, my mom painted. And I was like, oh, like the answer is that simple. He was surrounded by it. And so Adele likes to paint. My daughter likes to paint. And so I'm like, I need to put you around people that like to paint. I need to put you around your element. Like my son Jackson was like, he loves this. Well, he doesn't love it as much as I love it, but he does jiu-jitsu okay. He likes kickboxing and sando okay. But he loves boxing. Like when we go home, he'll YouTube boxing. He'll ask me about like Salvador, like random boxers. And I'm like, I got to look up who that Salvador Sanchez is. Isn't that Mexican fighter? And he's like, yeah. And so he loves it. And so I'm like, so recently I'm like, okay, we'll put you in a straight boxing gym. No kickboxing. You don't want to do this. Let me put you by your people, you know?
That's awesome.
My oldest son, Nico, he loves this stuff. So I'm like, okay, you coach with me on the mat. You know?
Nico.
So,
I know a Nico.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so, putting people around them, surrounding kids with like the things that they want to do and showing them that, hey, you can do, like, I didn't know, I wish I had thought of it sooner because maybe I'd have laid groundwork a little earlier, but I didn't realize how big of an influence my Taekwondo instructor was. Like, he's still doing Taekwondo. He's 62. I don't know how old he is. Sorry, Master Pat, I don't know how old you are. He's still competing. Winning gold. His forms, but he's still winning. Like, he's still competing in people his own age, in his own division. And now I look back and I'm like, man, he was always the influence. Like, he was always the one that showed me that, hey, I could do this. He did it his whole life. He didn't do anything else. And I'm like, okay, well, hopefully 62, I'll be up in there in the Master 28 division and pulling guard by this age.
Like Master Director or something. Yeah.
But yeah, those kids, putting them around people that want to roll, putting them around people that want to do it. And then it's a totally different thing than an adult wanting to do it.
Yeah.
An adult, you know that they want to do it because they know they need to put in work.
Right.
Like, let's get around. And you're like, all right, let's do it. And you're both like, ooh. But the kids, they're just like, more? More?
Yeah. But and it's because I feel like they don't have an ego yet, you know, or maybe they do, but I think they are more okay with accepting failure. Yeah. Like unless it's like a very serious kid, but most kids when they fail, they're just like, oh, I'm gonna get you in the next time.
I think they know they're still in the growing stage. They're like, oh, there's more to learn about this. This isn't the way. And they'll even look at you sometimes with like, that didn't work. And they're like, oh, that's what you want. You don't want them to be like, and then never try it again. Yeah. It's almost like, what's the answer? And you're like, okay, I can't give it to you right now, but yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I love that excitement about that.
Man, that's so awesome.
That's the reason that I really focus a lot on the kids program. Not that you don't get that enjoyment and excitement from adults, but for the adults, like there's so many things going on in their mind, right? That they have to like set aside time for jiu-jitsu. Whereas kids, if they love something, they're setting aside time for everything else around what they like. Like, I'm sure those kids were waiting all day long for just wrestling practice and jiu-jitsu practice.
100%.
So
yeah, when I was playing football in high school, we would skip school to show up to football practice. Eventually, they were like, if you don't go to school, you're not allowed to come to football practice. Like,
yeah. And then you were going to class because of it. So you're like, I love football so much, I'm gonna go to class. Like, dang, he really loves football. He's going to class.
Snap. Oh man, Mike, I think you gave me probably like one of the best answers to I asked some advice questions because this podcast is mostly about like, the warrior lifestyle. And, obviously you live that. So I usually ask advice questions, but you already kind of gave me an answer to probably some of the best advice ever, which is, surrounding your kids or even yourself around the people that you want to be like or the thing that you want to do.
Yes,
that's amazing.
That is so huge. So huge. It's like, and you see people that struggle and try, let's say they want to start a business and they really go it alone. And I'm like, that's so hard. It's like, you don't ask, you don't talk, you don't put yourself into the places where they're hanging out. Like, for example, if I was MMA media, I'm just making an example. Like if I was MMA media, I wouldn't be out here cold calling these guys. I'd be like finding out where all the press people are hanging out and be like, how do I get into the next spot? Like, this is where y'all hang here. How do I get into that level? Oh, how do I get from here to that badge? And then you but you have to put yourself there. You're not gonna, you know what I mean? Like who would know you? Like, so.
I feel like people do that because I'll say, jiu-jitsu is actually a lot easier than everything else in life because everything else in life you have to do on your own. It's like no one's going to help you brush your teeth. No one's going to teach you how to do these things. But jiu-jitsu, I'm going to show you every step.
Everything, yeah.
Whatever you
and
want,
everybody wants to know too. Like the 1 minute in between rounds is like, what was that? What was that?
Yeah.
It's like you get some of your best lessons right there, and it's somebody else just willing to show. Right, and if you hadn't surrounded yourself or exposed it to it, you just wouldn't know that, you just wouldn't know it.
But getting coaches for like other things, like having a business coach, most people would not think of that.
Yes.
And it's like, because now I'm a head coach of Underworld Jiu-Jitsu, I've had a lot of talks about like, businesses and how it should be ran. And one of my things is like, dude, I need someone to teach me. And I remember like some people are like, why would you want to, if you're going to start a business, why would you invest money? Like you should, reduce costs, not like, oh, let's pay more money for someone else to tell us what to do. And my brain was just like, dude,
get it started right.
I need someone to tell me what to do.
Get it right. Get it started right at least.
Be like, can I get an hour where you just show me step by step what to do like jiu-jitsu?
I really wish I could take the credit for everything here because I didn't go it alone. I put myself with people that were like going to help me and surround me. My business partners in this, my docs who you met, we grew up, we're essentially brothers. Our families grew up together. My dad tried to teach his dad Hapkido when they were back in the day. They tried to start businesses together. And we always teased about it like, oh, we should do it. But it's like we got to an age with our families and we're like, wait, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we really doing this? Like we're at a place where we could really do this. And I wouldn't have done it had I not had him as my business partner to help me, and him having an expertise in something. He wouldn't just launch a business off of not knowing. He wasn't going to be like, all right, restaurant. He was like, wait, you've been doing jiu-jitsu your whole life. Why aren't we like combining forces? And then as far as that, it's like, well, I don't know. I know this stuff. I don't know the actual logistics, infrastructure, how insurance works, how whatever works. And then so Brian comes in and being my mentor for that side of it. It's really like, none of this is me. You know what I mean? Like I did the same. I did my own advice. I put myself with people that were going to be like, hey guys, I have this dream. Do y'all have it? And they're like, yeah. And then that was it.
Hell yeah.
Like those were the guys. He had the dream, Doc's had the dream, Brian had the dream, and I had the dream. And so we were like, let's go for it. And we never got in each other's way. I'm just so thankful for that. You know what I mean? And none of it was by myself. I teach on the mat with other people. My assistant coaches are huge in corralling the kids. None of this is, it shouldn't even be me here.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna leave the podcast now.
For real, dude. Like I didn't do anything my own. Nothing. That's the reason I'm able to manage my family is because of Claudia, my wife. Like I've surrounded myself with, the kids help with the other kids. Like my kids help me. I put my kids around me because they can help me. Like, man, I am, I feel like I'm a confident and capable person because I went through my military career kind of for dolo. You help each other there, but like you're in for your own awards, you're making your own rank. And so, I am an independent person. But as far as like, I'll say it like this. When I opened this school, if I had done it all by myself and for me, I don't know what my mindset would be. I might be like, no, my way or the highway. But this was other people's thing. This is other people's jiu-jitsu now. There are other black belts that came here that weren't my black belts, and they have as much say in what jiu-jitsu is to my class, and that's me putting people around me. Like, It's not my way. Like nothing ever. When is it ever really your way by yourself?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well then let's get with a squad that is really down to like help each other. And that's all I'm doing. Putting people in my circle that are like, yeah, let's help each other.
Yeah. It reminds me of a good buddy of mine and a sponsor of the podcast, Eric the Defender, Houston, Texas, criminal defense and injury attorney, lawyer. If you need anything in Houston, man, he's the guy.
I hear his name a lot in the jiu-jitsu community too. Is he trained? Does he train?
He is a brown belt.
Oh, see, that's what I fear.
Savage leg locker. He's a huge sponsor of a lot of athletes. Like essentially, he's doing well, and jiu-jitsu, he attributes jiu-jitsu to where he's at in his life. So he takes the time to find guys that are really putting in the work and then
That's
help them
awesome.
pay for tournaments. Dude, I'm telling you, the number of hotels that he's paid for me to stay so I could go compete
That's
somewhere
awesome.
is absolutely insane. And he always tells me, he's like, Scotty, I find people that have these traits that I don't have, and I just like, he's like, maybe I'm weird, and maybe I'm collecting humans, but he's just like, dude, I'd find these people and they have these, crazy traits, and he's like, I have to help them. I have to be their friend. And it just reminds me of what you're saying. It's like there's these people and they have like these special abilities, and you're like, man, I just put myself where the people with special abilities are, and it all falls in place.
It does. It's so long as you guys are all pushing to like elevate each other, that's really it.
100%.
Like, that's why meme culture is awesome. There's this meme where there's this, Dwayne Wade's throwing up a log and he's just like, and it's like me celebrating my homie's success. Cause it's like, I ain't got hate and bone in my body. That's literally what it says. And it's like, man, that's how we all get there.
Hell yeah. I'll ask you one last question, man, because I feel like my podcast have kind of like turned this corner into this more. I'm like starting to dip more into the spiritual side. And I kind of felt you talking about like, essentially what you told me is that, you use jiu-jitsu to heal like trauma, And,
Absolutely.
I visited Six Blades Jiu-Jitsu a couple months ago, and the jiu-jitsu guys are the jiu-jitsu guys, and I did a podcast with one of the guys and trained there. But there was a lady who's a business partner with Janji. So Six Blades Austin is head coach is Janji Hibiro, legend, and his business partner is a very nice lady. And for whatever reason, I was just like talking to her, and she had mentioned that the jiu-jitsu gyms are very similar to like healing temples. She's like, believe it or not, she's like, I know, guy, you guys don't really think about it like this, but there's a lot of healing that takes place here. You guys like squeezing each other and trying to hurt each other, or really like trying to help each other.
It is.
Yeah.
It is really like that. I don't even, there's times where you'll come in and you can, there are sometimes people share, I'm sure now that you're an instructor, people come to you all the time and you didn't realize instructor meant more sometimes. Sometimes you're a sounding wall for the things that are going on in their life. And whether they come out to you and say, oh, coach, I got these issues or whatever, or you just kind of see it and they're like, this person just needs to kind of, wherever they're at, they're getting away here. It's like, hopefully I can provide something that they can tune in on or tune out of, And it is it is like a healing space. It is a healing space because what it does is, I'll say this, you're always trying to like problem solve. Okay. And so like, not that healing is necessarily a problem solving situation, but at least you have like a framework of like making progress towards somewhere. I don't know how to explain it any other way, because you don't ever feel you're going to accomplish or beat anything, even in jiu-jitsu sometimes. So you're like, as long as I'm like know the way and make footsteps towards that. And a lot of the times jiu-jitsu is a place where people can at least, I can feel myself taking positive footsteps forward. How can I do that with other parts, of my life? And man,
it's like that old school saying, the way in one thing is the way in all things.
Yeah. That I really wish those kinds of quotes and stuff weren't cliche, but you just see it happen in jiu-jitsu all the time. I'm sure you see it happen in a lot of other skill building, like really grinding, endeavors, anything. Yeah, anything that's like that, where you actually have to like put in work and then see outcomes. Like there is a healing in that, because you're like, oh, I can change things.
Yeah.
I can do something about my position. Like literally, I can do something about my position. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. My buddy, I just wanted to say this because I literally just had this meeting the other day, and he was just like, he was telling me he was helping me out in sales, like trying to help me understand like a framework for sales. And man, as he's talking to me, I'm like, this is the same framework I use at jiu-jitsu. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, people cold call, and he's like, they don't have success, and then they ask why it's not working. And he's like, you know what I tell him? I was like, well, how many did you do? Why don't you do 100? Why don't you do 200?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you do 500? And then do that for a year. Do 500 calls every day when you wake up. And then in a year time, then we can really figure out like where it is. He's like, I promise you in a year, you're going to have sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, I literally told someone the other day, he was like, well, why isn't this working? I was like, well, how many times you practice it?
It's literally reps, right? It is, dude. And even the sales path is a path. Because funny you mentioned that, I took a lot of sales courses because I used to roof too. In between the military and my oil and gas job, I was literally any way that I could make money to keep my family unit together. And before jiu-jitsu, it was like, I was roofing. And so I went to a lot of sales courses, and it was like, oh, I need reps. And then not only reps, it's like when I hit this wall, it's like, hey, coach, how do I get around this? Like, hey, the typical way isn't working. Same thing in sales. Hey, they're reluctant to this part. It's like, hey, pivot here. And it's like, oh, I can practice pivoting too. And it's like, yeah, there's more than one sales course, right? Sales route. There's more than one path, and it's all reps, man. And
yeah. Well, dude, I don't think we could make this podcast any better. I don't think we could top it any better, man. My podcast
I
is
talk too much, dude.
No, dude. My goal is to provide value and to have cool conversations, and this was that. So this is like, if someone was like, what is your podcast about? It's like, dude, go listen to this one, because this is the kind of podcast that I want to have. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thank you, Mike, for coming on.
Howdy, brother. Thank you. Thank you for visiting.
Awesome shit. Easy day, bro.